"Stop the ride! Stop the ride now!" Marcus Chen's voice tore through the mechanical roar, raw and desperate. For a split second, everything seemed to freeze. The screams from the riders changed pitch. The crowd below stopped pointing their phones skyward. From the control booth, ride operator Jessica Martinez was frantically slamming the emergency stop button, but nothing was happening. "System failure! Manual override not responding!" she screamed into her headset. "The trains won't stop!" Maintenance supervisor David Walsh was already sprinting toward the main power controls, his steel-toed boots pounding against the concrete. "Cut the lift! Kill the power to the lift hill! Now!" But the computerized safety system that should have engaged automatically had locked them out. The dual trains of the Dragon Challenge Fire and Ice were racing toward each other at 60 miles per hour on a collision course that should have been impossible. In the red Fire Dragon train, Marcus Chen could see the blue Ice Dragon approaching on the parallel track. They were supposed to create the illusion of a near miss, passing within 18 inches of each other. But something was wrong. The timing was off. The tracks were converging at the wrong angle. In 3 seconds, 2 trains carrying 32 people would meet not in a choreographed near miss, but in a catastrophic collision. August 18, 2023, Universal Studios Orlando. Temperature 98 degrees. Humidity 87%. The Dragon Challenge, a dueling inverted roller coaster that had operated for 15 years, was about to become the deadliest theme park disaster in American history. What started as a routine Friday afternoon would end with twisted metal, shattered lives, and questions about how a foolproof system could fail so completely. Marcus Chen, 28 years old, aerospace engineer, roller coaster enthusiast, had ridden Dragon Challenge 47 times. He knew every twist, every inversion, every precisely calculated near miss. He could feel in his bones that this time was different. In his final moments, he would try to warn others, try to save lives, even as physics and velocity made survival impossible. In less than 47 seconds, a ride that had thrilled millions would become a tomb of tangled steel and shattered dreams. What happened wasn't just mechanical failure. It was a cascade of human arrogance, corporate negligence, and systematic betrayal of the trust placed in those who promised the safest thrills on Earth. You're watching Disaster Chronicles. If this story grips you, subscribe, like, and share, because what you're about to witness is only the beginning. Marcus Chen wasn't just a roller coaster enthusiast. He was a student of their physics, their poetry, their perfect marriage of danger and safety. With a master's degree in aerospace engineering from MIT and a YouTube channel dedicated to coaster mechanics with 800 subscribers, Marcus understood these machines better than most people who operated them. To him, Dragon Challenge wasn't just a ride. It was a masterpiece of engineering that he'd studied for over a decade. The Dragon Challenge had a legendary history. Originally opened as Dueling Dragons in 1999 as part of Universal's Islands of Adventure, it was the world's first dueling inverted coaster. 2 trains, Fire and Ice, would launch simultaneously, racing through intertwined tracks, creating 3 near-miss moments where riders would pass within inches of each other at combined speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. It was ballet at velocity, chaos controlled by mathematics. Marcus had first ridden Dragon Challenge when he was 14, a nervous kid from San Francisco visiting Orlando with his family. That first ride changed his life. I realized that someone had calculated every force, every moment, every sensation, he later wrote in his blog. It was applied physics as art. I knew then I wanted to understand how they did it. By 28, Marcus had become one of the most respected voices in coaster enthusiast circles. His YouTube videos, breaking down the engineering of famous rides, were used in university engineering courses. He'd consulted for smaller parks on safety protocols. He'd even been invited by Universal for a behind-the-scenes tour of Dragon Challenge in 2022, where he'd met Jessica Martinez, the lead operator who'd become a friend. Marcus understood these machines like a surgeon understands anatomy, Jessica would later testify. He could diagnose problems just by listening to the lift chain. He'd catch things our own maintenance team missed. But Marcus had been growing concerned about Dragon Challenge. In recent months, he'd documented troubling changes in his meticulous ride logs, notebooks, where he recorded every ride with timestamp, weather conditions, and observations. The entries from summer 2023 showed escalating worry. Each observation was dismissed by park officials as enthusiast overthinking or perception distortion from repeated rides. But Marcus knew better. These machines operated on millisecond precision. A half-second delay wasn't trivial, it was a warning. The problems went deeper than mechanical issues. In early 2023, Universal had outsourced Dragon Challenge's maintenance to a third-party contractor, Apex Technical Services, to cut costs. The experienced Universal team that had maintained the ride for 15 years was reassigned. Apex brought in younger, cheaper technicians who knew coasters in general but didn't know this coaster, its quirks, its personality, its unique demands. Every coaster is different, Marcus had explained in a video, posted just weeks before the disaster. Dragon Challenge especially. 2 trains, perfectly synchronized, requiring absolute precision. You can't just read a manual and understand it. You need years of experience with its specific behaviors. Jessica Martinez had confided her concerns to Marcus during a private conversation in July. The new maintenance team doesn't understand the Dragons, she said, using the nickname long-time operators had for the trains. They treat it like any other coaster, but the dueling element makes everything exponentially more complex. One mistimed dispatch, one sensor reading wrong, and those near misses become impacts. The computerized control system was another source of worry. Originally designed by Swiss firm Bolliger and Mabillard, the system had been modified repeatedly over the years. Universal's IT department had implemented improvements, faster dispatch capabilities, automated weight distribution calculations, smart, predictive maintenance alerts. But each modification added complexity, and complexity in safety systems breeds failure points. On August 15, 3 days before the disaster, Marcus had his most concerning ride. He'd noticed the Fire Dragon's acceleration felt different, not dramatically, but enough that his trained senses detected it. After the ride, he approached the control booth where Jessica was working. The acceleration profiles changed, he told her. Fire's reaching the first near-miss point about 0.7 seconds faster than it should. Jessica checked her computers. System shows everything nominal. The system's wrong, Marcus insisted. I've ridden this 47 times. I know these dragons. Something's off with the synchronization. Jessica trusted Marcus enough to file a maintenance report, but the response was predictable. All sensors showing normal. No action required. Marcus made a decision that haunts his family to this day. Instead of walking away, he decided to document the problem thoroughly. He would ride both dragons multiple times on August 18, taking detailed measurements with his phone's accelerometer, proving definitively that something was wrong. He believed that with enough data, he could force Universal to act. On the morning of August 18, Marcus arrived at Universal when the park opened. He methodically rode each dragon, recording data, making notes. By 2 p.m., he had enough evidence to prove the synchronization was failing. He was preparing to present his findings to park management when he decided to take one more ride, this time on Fire Dragon, to capture video of the near miss from the front seat. He boarded Fire Dragon at 2:47 p.m., GoPro mounted, phone recording accelerometer data, notebook tucked in his cargo pocket. As the train climbed the 125-foot lift hill, Marcus was still thinking like an engineer, still believing that problems could be solved with data and logic. He had 47 seconds to live. The Dragon Challenge was more than a roller coaster. It was a 200-ton symphony of steel, hydraulics, and computer-controlled precision, operating at the absolute limits of physics. By August 2023, this symphony had become a cacophony of deferred maintenance, software conflicts, and mechanical degradation masked by digital lies. The ride's fundamental design was ambitious beyond anything attempted before 1999. Two completely independent coasters, each with different layouts, had to launch simultaneously and meet at 3 precise points where riders would experience near misses. The margin for error was measured in fractions of seconds and inches. The original Swiss designers had built in multiple redundancies, but redundancies mean nothing when the primary systems are compromised. The first critical failure point was the weight distribution system. Each train's speed depended on its total weight. More weight meant faster speeds through inversions. The original system used mechanical scales at the loading platform, feeding data to the control computer, which would adjust launch timing accordingly. But in March 2023, Apex Technical Services had upgraded to a visual estimation system using cameras and AI to calculate passenger weight. It was supposed to be more efficient, a former Apex technician revealed anonymously. No more mechanical parts to maintain, but the AI was trained on data from other parks. It consistently underestimated weight because Dragon Challenge's seats were deeper, hiding passenger mass. This meant Fire Dragon, typically carrying heavier passengers in its front-loaded configuration, was consistently running 3-5% faster than the computer believed. Over a 60-second ride, this created a cumulative timing error of nearly 2 seconds catastrophic for near-miss synchronization. The track itself was deteriorating in ways invisible to casual inspection. Inverted coasters put unique stress on track joints because the trains hang below the rails. After 24 years and millions of cycles, metal fatigue had created microscopic fractures at key stress points. The track gauge the distance between rails had widened by millimeters in certain sections. Millimeters that meant the difference between thrilling and killing. The wheel assemblies were another hidden danger. Each train had 32 wheel assemblies, each containing 3 wheels: load wheels, guide wheels, and upstop wheels. Proper maintenance required replacing these polyurethane wheels every 3-4 weeks. Under Apex's cost-cutting regime, replacement was extended to 6-8 weeks. Worn wheels created irregular friction, affecting speed and timing unpredictably. But the most catastrophic failure was in the block zone system, the fundamental safety mechanism preventing collisions. Roller coasters are divided into block zones, sections that can only contain one train. Sensors detect train positions, computers calculate timing, and brakes engage automatically if violations occur. Dragon Challenge had 7 block zones per track, with 3 shared near-miss zones requiring perfect coordination. In July 2023, a lightning strike had damaged several proximity sensors in the shared zones. Instead of replacing them, a 50-0 expense, requiring 3 days of downtime, Apex had implemented a software patch. The patch extrapolated train positions from upstream sensors, essentially guessing where trains should be rather than knowing where they were. Internal emails obtained during investigation revealed Apex engineers' concerns. Extrapolation assumes consistent velocity. Any variation makes positioning unreliable. Near-miss zones need actual sensors, not calculated positions. This is a band-aid on a severed artery. These warnings were overruled by Universal's operations management, who couldn't afford the downtime during peak summer season. The control software itself had become a monster of competing code. The original Swiss programming was elegant, efficient, and proven. But 24 years of patches, updates, and improvements had created what programmers call spaghetti code, tangled logic, where changing one element could have unexpected consequences elsewhere. In 2021, Universal had added a smart dispatch system that would automatically adjust timing based on weather conditions, reducing delays during rain. In 2022, they'd implemented predictive maintenance too, that would anticipate problems before they occurred. In 2023, they'd installed guest flow optimization to reduce wait times by speeding dispatch intervals. Each system worked in isolation. Together, they created chaos. Smart dispatch would adjust timing without informing predictive maintenance. Guest flow would override safety delays to maintain throughput. The systems fought each other constantly, with the original safety protocols usually losing. The computer logs from August 18 revealed the digital disaster unfolding. 2:43 p.m. Smart dispatch detected humidity increase, adjusted Fire Dragon launch timing, plus 0.3 seconds. 2:44 p.m. Guest flow optimization detected queue length, overrode adjustment to maintain interval. 2:45 p.m. Predictive maintenance, requested 30-second delay for wheel temperature reading. 2:45 p.m. Request denied by guest flow optimization. 2:46 p.m. Block zone sensors 4 and 5 showing conflict extrapolation algorithm compensating. 2:47 p.m. Manual override attempted by operator, denied by system automation. The mechanical brake systems, the last line of defense, were operating at 60% efficiency. Brake fins, the metal blades that rise from the track to slow trains, were supposed to deploy in 0.5 seconds. Worn hydraulics meant deployment now took 1.2 seconds. In a collision scenario, those fractions of seconds meant the difference between a controlled stop and catastrophe. Temperature was another unconsidered factor. At 98 degrees, the steel track had expanded by nearly an inch over its total length. This expansion wasn't uniform sunny sections, expanded more than shaded areas, creating subtle warps in track geometry. The wheels, designed to operate optimally at 70-80 degrees, were running at 140 degrees, their polyurethane softening and deforming. The final mechanical insult was the chain lift motors. Designed to pull trains up at a consistent 8 feet per second, the worn motors now operated at variable speeds depending on load. Fire Dragon's motor, older and more worn, was pulling 5% slower than Ice Dragon's. This meant the simultaneous dispatch was anything but. Ice Dragon was cresting the lift hill nearly 2 seconds before Fire Dragon, destroying the carefully calculated synchronization. All these failures, weight miscalculation, track degradation, worn wheels, sensor failures, software conflicts, brake delays, temperature effects, motor inconsistencies, were individually survivable. The original Swiss design had enough safety margin to absorb any single failure, even multiple failures. But the accumulation of dozens of failures, each amplifying the others, had pushed Dragon Challenge beyond its design limits. On August 18, at 2:47 p.m., when Marcus Chen's Fire Dragon train began its climb, the ride wasn't operating at 95% or even 90% efficiency. It was a collection of barely controlled failures held together by luck and the fading ghost of Swiss engineering excellence. The luck was about to run out. Universal Studios Orlando marketed itself as the most technologically advanced theme park on Earth. But behind the marketing facade was a corporation that had systematically prioritized profit over safety, buried critical reports, and gambled with lives for quarterly earnings. The Dragon Challenge disaster wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of deliberate decisions made in boardrooms far from the screaming riders. The rot began with the 2021 acquisition of operational control by Olympus Entertainment Holdings, a private equity firm that saw theme parks as undermonetized assets ripe for optimization. Their strategy was simple: cut costs by 30%, increase revenue by 25%, and sell within 5 years at 400% profit. Safety was reclassified from critical priority to regulatory compliance requirement. CEO Jonathan Sterling's leaked memo from January 2023 set the tone. Every dollar spent beyond minimum regulatory compliance is a dollar stolen from shareholders. We must find the optimal balance between guest satisfaction and operational efficiency. That optimal balance would kill 14 people. The decision to outsource Dragon Challenge's maintenance to Apex Technical Services saved Universal $3.2 million annually. The veteran Universal team engineers who'd maintained the ride since opening were reassigned or laid off. Their combined 300 years of experience was replaced by Apex's modern efficiency model, employing recent technical school graduates at half the cost. "We were watching a slow-motion disaster," testified Robert Hayes, former Universal senior maintenance engineer. Dragon Challenge required intuitive understanding built over years. You needed to know that the Fire Dragon pulled slightly left in the Cobra roll, that Ice Dragon's brake run needed manual adjustment in high humidity. Apex treated it like any generic coaster. The inspection records told 2 different stories. Public records, submitted to Florida's Department of Agriculture, which inexplicably oversees ride safety, showed perfect compliance. Internal records, encrypted on a separate server, revealed 147 critical maintenance items deferred as non-essential. These included: when senior ride operator Jessica Martinez submitted a safety concern report in June 2023, documenting timing inconsistencies that could lead to collision, she was transferred to a gift shop position. Her replacement, hired at 60% of her salary, had never operated a dueling coaster. The insurance situation revealed Universal's calculated cynicism. While maintaining state minimum liability coverage, they'd purchased a $500 million business interruption policy that would pay out if a ride was closed due to catastrophic incident. Internal emails discussed how a manageable incident might actually be profitable through insurance recovery and the ability to demolish an increasingly expensive attraction. Universal's relationship with regulators was corrupt by design. The lead Florida inspector assigned to Universal, Thomas Morrison, was hired as a consultant by Olympus Entertainment's subsidiary for $75,000 annually. His inspection reports were ghostwritten by Universal's legal department, technically accurate but omitting critical context. The software disaster went deeper than incompatible systems. In April 2023, Universal's IT department had discovered a critical bug in the block zone calculation algorithm that could, under specific circumstances, allow trains to occupy the same zone. Instead of shutting down to fix it, estimated at 72 hours of downtime costing $1.8 million in lost revenue, they implemented a probability mitigation protocol that would prevent the bug 99.7% of the time. Chief Technology Officer Sarah Kim had objected strenuously, writing, "A 0.3% failure rate means statistical certainty of occurrence given sufficient cycles. At 30 dispatches per hour, we're looking at failure within 11 days. She was overruled and subsequently resigned, signing an NDA that would later be ruled unenforceable in criminal proceedings. Training budgets were slashed 70%. New operators received 8 hours of instruction instead of the manufacturer-recommended 40 hours. Emergency procedures were reviewed via online video rather than physical drills. The last full evacuation drill was in 2019. Operators didn't know how to manually release restraints, where emergency stops were located, or how to override the automated systems. Most damning was the suppression of near-miss incidents. Between January and August 2023, there were 7 documented cases of trains passing closer than designed parameters, including one incident where guests reported feeling wind from the other train. Each incident was classified as within acceptable variance and wasn't reported to authorities. The manufacturer, Bolliger Mabillard, had attempted intervention. After receiving concerning reports from former employees, they'd sent a technical team in May 2023. Their 47-page report concluded with stark language. Immediate cessation of operations required, pending comprehensive mechanical and software overhaul. Current configuration presents imminent catastrophic risk. Universal's legal department responded by threatening litigation for tortious interference with business operations and defamation by implication. M was forced to withdraw their report, later stating they could not certify the ride's safety under current operating parameters. Employee whistleblowers were systematically silenced. When maintenance technician David Chen, no relation to Marcus, posted concerns on an industry forum, he was fired for social media policy violation and sued for disclosure of proprietary information. 3 other employees who raised concerns were terminated for various fabricated infractions. The financial pressure intensified through summer 2023. Dragon Challenge was Universal's most expensive ride to operate, but only its 7th most popular. Olympus Entertainment was pushing to either drastically reduce operating costs or close the attraction. The pressure to keep it running through the profitable summer season was enormous. On August 14, 4 days before the disaster, Universal's board of directors held an emergency meeting. The agenda, recovered from deleted files, Dragon Challenge risk assessment and mitigation strategies. The conclusion: continue operation through Labor Day, then announce closure for reimagining. They were literally planning to run the ride until it broke, just hoping it would last 3 more weeks. The morning of August 18 saw record attendance 47, 0 guests in the park. Dragon Challenge had a 90-minute wait by noon. The control booth was experiencing multiple system warnings, but operators had been trained to ignore them as normal anomalies. The block zone sensors were giving conflicting readings. The dispatch timing was erratic. The brake systems were showing temperature warnings. At 2:15 p.m., 30 minutes before the disaster, the automatic safety system attempted to shut down the ride, detecting what it classified as a critical synchronization failure. The shutdown was overridden by guest flow optimization, which calculated that closing would create unacceptable guest dissatisfaction metrics. Jessica Martinez, despite being transferred, had come to the park as a guest that day. She saw the operational chaos from the ground and texted her former supervisor, "Dragons are mistiming badly. Near miss at second intersection looks wrong. Someone's going to die today." The response, "Not your concern anymore. Enjoy your day off." 32 minutes later, Marcus Chen and 31 other riders would board 2 trains for the last time, trusting a system that had already failed them before they'd even sat down. August 18, 2023, 2:47 p.m. The temperature had climbed to 98 degrees, making the metal railings too hot to touch. The queue for Dragon Challenge stretched back 90 minutes, filled with excited families, tourists with Universal Express passes, and thrill-seekers live-streaming their wait. Marcus Chen took his seat in the front row of Fire Dragon, his GoPro secured, his notebook filled with 12 pages of observations that would never be read. Behind him, the red train filled with 15 other riders. The Morrison family from Texas, celebrating their son's 16th birthday, a honeymoon couple from Brazil, 3 college friends from UCF, and a grandmother facing her fear of roller coasters for her granddaughter's sake. In the parallel loading station, Ice Dragon was loading its 16 riders. including a YouTube travel vlogger, a group of co-worker friends from a nearby conference, and two brothers who'd been riding Dragon Challenge since its opening year. The restraints came down over the shoulder harnesses that locked riders in place for the inverted journey ahead. Marcus heard the familiar mechanical clicks, felt the pressure against his chest. But his trained ear caught something else, a pneumatic hiss that lasted a fraction too long. One of the restraint sensors was struggling. In the control booth, a yellow warning light flickered, then went green. The system had decided the anomaly was within acceptable parameters. "Dragons ready for battle," came the recorded announcement. "Fire and ice will duel in 3, 2, 1. One Hopi Stam con pay asses." The launch wasn't simultaneous. Ice Dragon, its lighter load and stronger lift motor pulling it faster, began climbing a full 1.8 seconds before fire. This should have triggered an automatic abort. The timing window for safe operation was 0.5 seconds. But the modified dispatch algorithm, confused by conflicting inputs from smart dispatch and guest flow optimization, calculated this as intentional offset for optimal guest experience. As the trains climbed the 125-foot lift hill, riders couldn't know that they were already doomed. The accumulation of failures, timing offset, speed miscalculation, sensor blindness, had created a scenario the original designers never imagined. Two trains that would meet not in orchestrated near misses, but in catastrophic collision. Marcus felt the familiar drop of his stomach as Fire Dragon crested the hill and plunged into the first drop. But his engineer's intuition was screaming. The acceleration felt wrong. They were moving too fast. His phone's accelerometer, recording in his pocket, would later show they hit 67 miles per h instead of the designed 60 miles. The result of worn wheels, providing less friction, expanded track, providing less resistance, and the computer's weight miscalculation removing speed restrictions. The first near-miss point came at the vertical loops. By design, the trains should pass within 18 inches, Ice Dragon inverting clockwise, while Fire went counterclockwise, riders facing each other for a split second of terrified exhilaration. But Ice Dragon was now 3.2 seconds ahead of schedule. The trains missed each other entirely, passing at different times. Riders felt confused. Where was the other train? But assumed it was intentional. In the control booth, alarms were cascading. Synchronization failure, block zone violation, proximity alert. But Jessica Martinez's replacement, 22-year-old Tyler Brooks with 3 weeks of experience, had been trained to ignore these warnings. "The system always complains," his supervisor had told him. "Just keep dispatching unless it fully locks down." The second near-miss point approached the batwing element, where trains would spiral around each other in a deadly dance. Marcus could see Ice Dragon ahead, could calculate in his mind that the timing was catastrophically wrong. They weren't going to miss. They were going to meet. He tried to warn the others. Security cameras captured him, turning in his seat, shouting to the riders behind him, pointing frantically at the blue train ahead. But at 65 miles per hour, with wind roaring and screams of excitement drowning everything out, no one understood. They thought he was adding to the thrill. At 2:48:37 p.m., the impossible happened. The Dragon Challenge's third near-miss element, a point where the tracks came within 18 inches before spiraling away, became a point of impact. Ice Dragon, travelling at 58 miles per hour, met Fire Dragon, travelling at 63 miles per hour, in a combined collision force of 121 miles per hour. The front cars made direct contact. The sound was indescribable, not a crash but an explosion of steel, fiberglass, and physics. Marcus Chen, in Fire Dragon's front row, took the full impact. The GoPro footage, recovered later, showed 3 frames of Ice Dragon approaching before cutting to black. His body absorbed forces exceeding 100 Gs, 50 times what humans can survive. The trains didn't just collide, they intertwined. The twisted wreckage of the front cars locked together, dragging both trains off their tracks. Fire Dragon's lead car separated entirely, falling 45 feet to the concrete below. Ice Dragon jackknifed, its rear cars whipping forward with such violence that riders were subjected to forces that liquefied internal organs. The automatic safety systems, finally overwhelmed beyond all programming, initiated emergency stops on both lift hills, preventing waiting trains from adding to the carnage. But for the 32 riders already committed to the ride cycle, it was too late. The trains, now a tangled mass of steel and screaming humanity, continued moving on momentum alone. They struck the support structure of the Cobra roll, shearing through a concrete pillar. The track section collapsed, sending both trains plummeting another 30 feet into the mechanical area below. The impact ruptured hydraulic lines, spraying fluid that ignited on contact with overheated brake components. Tyler Brooks, watching his monitors show impossible data, 2 trains occupying the same space, finally understood. He hit the emergency stop, cutting power to the entire ride. But physics doesn't stop when electricity does. The twisted mass of both trains continued sliding down the ruined track until friction finally brought them to rest, suspended 20 feet above the ground, riders trapped in inverted positions as fire spread below them. The response was chaos. Security guards without radios couldn't coordinate. The nearest fire station was 12 minutes away. Park medics, trained for heat exhaustion and scraped knees, faced trauma beyond imagination. Guests were recording with phones, streaming horror live to the world. Parents were screaming, looking for children. The PA system, on automatic, continued playing cheerful music. Jessica Martinez, watching from the ground, didn't hesitate. Despite being officially just a guest, she ran to the maintenance access, using her old codes, never deleted from the system, to reach the manual controls. She began the agonizing process of manually releasing restraints, knowing that dropping injured riders might kill them, but leaving them inverted certainly would. It took 47 minutes to extract all survivors. Marcus Chen was declared dead at the scene, along with 5 others from Fire Dragon's front cars. 8 more would die en route to hospitals, or in the following days from internal injuries. Of the 32 riders, only 11 would eventually walk out of hospitals. The others faced lifetime paralysis, traumatic brain injuries, or amputations. The immediate aftermath was a case study in corporate disaster management. Universal's first statement, released while victims were still being extracted, claimed an unexpected mechanical anomaly and emphasized their perfect safety record. They locked down the scene, attempting to bar investigators until a court order forced access. But the evidence was overwhelming. Marcus Chen's notebook, recovered from his body, contained detailed observations predicting exactly what had occurred. The GoPro footage showed the collision in horrific detail. The computer logs revealed years of deferred maintenance and ignored warnings. The testimony of fired employees, freed from NDAs by criminal proceedings, painted a picture of systematic negligence that rose to homicide. Within 24 hours, Universal Orlando closed indefinitely. Criminal charges were filed against 14 executives and board members. Olympus Entertainment's stock price collapsed 73% in 3 days. The lawsuits, still ongoing, are expected to exceed $2 billion. Dragon Challenge was demolished within a month. The twisted steel sold for scrap, the land where it stood left empty, a grass field where nothing would ever be built again. Marcus Chen's YouTube channel became a memorial. His final video, posted the morning of August 18, was titled, "Why I Love Dragon Challenge." In it, he said, "These machines are poetry in steel and physics. They're safe not because they're tame, but because brilliant engineers respected the forces involved. When we stop respecting those forces, when we prioritize profit over physics, These dragons will show us why they were feared in mythology. Today, a small plaque sits near the entrance to Universal Orlando. It lists 14 names and contains a simple message in memory of those who trusted us with their lives. August 18, 2023. Never forget, never repeat. The Dragon Challenge disaster changed American theme park regulation forever. The Chen Safety Act requires independent inspections, criminal liability for executives who ignore safety warnings, and immediate shutdown authority for any employee who observes unsafe conditions. It's legislation written in blood, paid for with lives that should never have been lost. If you found this story important, please subscribe, share, and remember, every thrill comes with trust. When that trust is betrayed for profit, the cost is always higher than any corporation can afford to pay. The dragons of Universal Orlando are gone, but their lesson remains: respect the physics, maintain the machines, and never, ever prioritize money over lives. We'll see you in the next episode.